What we're seeing more now of, I think, in my opinion, is that it's a more normalizing market, right? I think it's been such a strong seller's market here in Colorado for such a long time. And then when interest rates went up with all these concessions, buyers are kind of getting a little bit of an upper hand in a lot of areas. Now, not everywhere you're seeing that. Like we had the stories that we had the last time that in some certain areas, sellers are still having that advantage and being able to.
In the more premium affluent areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. So these nice houses and these premium areas are still going above ask price, and they're getting multiple offers. But the majority of the market, you're still seeing that switch a little bit, the normalizing. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Fire on Fire. We're here with Chris Lopez from Property Llama and Jamin Cook with Fire on Fire. Real excited today. We've got just kind of a recap of what's been going on the last 30 days and talking about the conversations we're having about real estate, what's going on in the market. We're having a little pre-discussion here about things we're witnessing and hearing from people, and it's just a different market. And so we all have different stories to talk about here, and we're just kind of excited about getting into it and talking more about how we can help people get through the challenges that we're seeing right now in the market.
Yeah. Great intro, Paul. Jamin, you were talking about before, you just actually came from a closing this morning.
Yeah, I did.
And you're recapping there. I mean, while everything is tough right now, a lot went well for you. Tee it up and talk us through that transaction.
Yeah, I mean, the market's tough out there for sellers. It can be done, but there just aren't as many buyers. Everybody's afraid of what the market's doing. They're afraid of all the stuff in the economy. So everybody's just kind of sitting back still. And I feel like that's kind of been the way just is what it's been for the last year or so, right? We always talk about how that everybody's kind of sitting back. So house in Castle Rock, had it listed for 30 days, right around there. Got it under contract and closed on it this morning. And, you know, I think for me, you know, you look at the sellers and they're like, well, we listed it for this price, but we gave away this and this and this to get it sold. And I think you're seeing, and I don't know what the number range is, but you know, that entry level to, it seems to be between 700,000 and 800,000, somewhere in there. We're seeing concessions for buy downs, right? So, and closing costs. So we automatically started off with the only offer we had was full price offer with a $14,000 concession right off the bat. And then you always worry about, especially as a realtor, you always worry about what the inspection is going to be. So on this house, we went ahead and did a bunch of stuff up front. We got a cracked window fixed, replaced. We did a little bit of roof work that needed to be done. Got the furnace cleaned and serviced beforehand, finished up some painting, stuff like that. And I think some of that work ahead of time, number one, you can shop those prices around, right? You're not at the mercy, and you're not on a time crunch. So you're not at the mercy of the deadlines, and get some of that stuff done ahead of time, which may save you in your inspection. So, you know, that stuff doesn't come up, or you can show, hey, it's already been done.
And I think, we're talking about this before too, there's an effect a lot of times. It's not uncommon, hey, get full price and then offer concession back. And buyers like that because a $14,000 price reduction doesn't do much for them at the closing table, and it makes a difference of like $20 or $30 a month or monthly payments. It's very marginal. But if you do a concession where they get $14,000 at closing at the table, help with closing costs, buying down the interest rate, whatever it is. And then I've seen the same thing you have, is you can kind of get the double whammy of, hey, we're going to take the concession. And then when people do the inspection, hey, they come back with, hey, 20 items, and hey, 8 to 10 are legitimate-ish. Well, all of a sudden they can really start beating you up then. So I like the strategy that you employed for your clients, where you did I don't think it's technically called a pre-inspection, but hey, you inspected before, you get things fixed, and that way you already get this like, hey, we know the roof will be an issue, this cracked window will be an issue, we know this will be a concern. Go and get the furnace cleaned and serviced, and then that way there's a lot less things on there, and you get a lot less of like, oh, we don't have 12 things that can really beat you up on.
Yeah,
we've got 1 or 2 things that we can still ask for. We're not going to like beat you up.
And and the real estate agents out there know, if you're doing deals, it trends on what always comes up, right? It's going to be roof, it's going to be HVAC, it's going to be anything that may be structural, concrete. Sometimes decks comes up, but those are the big things. So if you can mitigate some of that beforehand and do it at a cheaper cost than, a $10,000 concession, where maybe it costs you $6,500 to do some of that stuff, right? You're putting money back in your client's pocket and doing your job. So I think that, versus where we were when the market was booming and you get away with not doing anything, now you got to do a bunch of stuff, a bunch of pre-work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's crazy because I know we have talked a lot about that this was going to be a crazy market if interest rates came down, right? All our predictions were if interest rates drop, this market's going to take off. And what we're seeing more now of, I think, in my opinion, is that it's a more normalizing market, right? I think it's been such a strong seller's market here in Colorado for such a long time. And then when interest rates went up, buyers, now with all these concessions, buyers are kind of getting a little bit of an upper hand in a lot of areas. Now, not everywhere you're seeing that. Like we had the stories that we had the last time that in some certain areas, sellers are still having that advantage and being able to. In
the more premium affluent areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. So these nice houses and these premium areas are still going above ask price, and they're getting multiple offers. But the majority of the market, you're still seeing, I think, that switch a little bit, the normalizing, more days on the market for houses, because we're so used to houses going on the market and be gone in a couple of days. Now you're seeing the normalize 60 to 90 days on the market, right? That was a normal balanced market, right? And I think we're moving more towards that. And that scares people that haven't seen that in a while, especially all the new buyers out there that have always experienced a seller's market. It's hard to get into a house, but there's deals out there now. There's advantage for buyers to get in at a significantly lower rate with a buy down or get concessions of some sort and inspection items where for a long time you weren't able to get that. So yeah, that's where, the seasonality is not what I expected it to be at all at this time. We're still getting into the peak of the season into late May and June, and then July you just see that
it's been
drop
pretty
off.
Flat so far this year though, as far as like seasonality.
Yeah,
so
right.
I partially agree with you. I think we've been normalizing for the last year and year and a half or so. I think the very beginning of this year, rates were coming down. Consumer sentiment was still pretty high. Like there was some early traction on there. And then when all the uncertainty and the tariff talk really started getting traction, it felt like the pause button got hit. And it's going to be interesting to see with a lot of like the April data when, the tariffs, first went into impact or effect, got rolled back, all that. We'll start seeing how that data is in April. I think we're going to start seeing some like movements in data as well. I think this is going beyond the normalizing of it. Right. I think just because so many people are like, they're so uncertain right now. Yeah. And rightfully so.
Yeah. And costs, potentially could go up. Now, even if you're right, these tariffs don't go through, I think now it's a little bit, we're getting to that point where it's too late to pull back, right? Even if tomorrow they change everything, we still are going to feel an impact. I was watching a special they had one of the longshoremen was filming where the ships are in the port of Long Beach and LA, and they have already laid off half of their shoremen. They were showing the ships that were in port, which was about, it was still pretty full, but they said it's less than normal. And they said in the next week, they were probably going to have maybe a third of what they normally have. Which is significant. That's huge. So there's going to be supply chain shortages like we saw during COVID, and people are preparing for that. And the last thing on their mind right now is to go out and buy a house. Yeah. People with cash, that's not a problem, obviously. So yeah, I think we're going to see some changes for sure. I agree with you there.
Yeah, but if you got the money or the ability and your job is secure, it's a good time to buy.
Yeah. I feel like at this point, like my question is like, something is going to quote unquote break soon. What is that going to be? Yeah. Is it the tariffs? Is it the consumer? Is it the real estate market? Like what's going to break to something I think has to break in the economy, so to speak. And it's really interesting because, we are still have very low supply on the market. And then so, you think about it's not just pure supply and demand right now, but if that demand really, really dries up, it'll be interesting to see how people, if they lower the prices or if people sit and hold for a while, like maybe we see, I could make a case now. I could say, hey, single family homes, I'm less bullish at this moment in time on like their prices staying like, very modestly appreciative or, around flat to modest appreciation.
Right.
Because if people just stop buying out there, like, some people start eventually dropping prices.
Yeah.
Because they have to sell.
An interesting metric to look at would be year over year for the last 10 years, probably how many houses have sold, like the number of homes sold. I bet you it's going to be down.
I agree. And the thing with that, because I think, really early April was when they went into impact. So I think April will start seeing that data. That closed data is going to take 30 to 60 days to start filtering through. I haven't seen the published data from RE Colorado yet for April. I'm really curious to see it when it comes out here in the next few days.
I am too. I think there's going to be a lot of information. People are dying to see which direction this is really going with the data. Now,
it'll probably take another month to even start getting more meaningful data as well.
Right.
Yeah. And, a lot of this can be really media driven, right? And not that it's wrong. It's just as soon as, the media gets a hold of what's going on with housing prices, that's slapped all over the news because, housing market has been very expensive and inflated and you're going crazy. So that's been the talking point in media. And now that has switched to, the housing market, is there a crash? That's the biggest question. Is there a crash coming? I don't know. I hope not. But when it starts getting fueled in the media, that starts to scare people even more, right? And more rapidly that occurs. Even if the numbers are still good in some local areas, that could cause a lot of pain to some people in good, healthy areas, right?
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing like a crash in a lot like the single family home area. Like prices may soften up some of the some neighborhoods may get hit a little harder. Like it might be like a small correction, but I have a hard time imagining a crash just because we have such a supply deficit. So many people that borrowed, look at like the credit score history since 2010ish in the recovery. Like the borrowers since have all been extremely well qualified borrowers. Strong incomes, high FICO scores, all that stuff. So from like overall, like the vast majority of people are strong borrowers. A lot of people have my primary is 2.5%. What do you guys at?
I'm at 2.9.
You're at 2.9.
I'm low threes.
Yeah, so like a lot of these people say, well, hey, I can sit and write it out for a bit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious how those dynamics play now. Condos, though, condos are a different story.
Yes.
I think that's where I see a lot more potential for like a crash or a bigger correction.
Mm-hmm.
We've starting to see I think some of it, but just the amount the headwinds on there between HOAs, insurance, and deferred maintenance. We talked about this last time, Jamin. A lot of these complexes now can no longer not just get qualified for FHA, which is harder. Many are falling out of like conventional financing guidelines as well.
Yeah, I've seen that across the board. That's funny you mentioned that because I was just talking with Jamin about this too, and a lot of other people is I've never seen so much due diligence on HOA documents. Do you remember back in the day you'd get these packs? No
one would read them back then.
No, you just throw them aside. Now, the first question that agents ask when you have a condo with an HOA is, how is the HOA doing? And does it have reserves? Is there any special assessments? How much is insurance costing? So they are really diving in, and I'm seeing that is probably the number one reason that people are walking away from anything with an HOA right now. There's horror stories out there all over the news, and everybody, hears about the insurance rates and why HOAs are getting so expensive right now. And people don't want to be out of control because it's not in your control when that HOA decides to raise that. That's out of your control completely. And, that can be rough. A lot of people thinking that through twice now.
We had one that we were looking at selling and had gone on a listing appointment, and it was probably 6 months after the storm in 2023, and HOA had voted the night before to do a $12,000 assessment, and then the next day tried to ACH that $12,000 out of everybody's account.
Like it just tried to do an automatic withdrawal?
Yep. The very next day.
Is that legal?
I don't know if it's legal, but they called and they're like, this is what they tried to do. And I'm like, holy cow.
I mean, how many people's accounts they overdraw in there?
Well, how many people have $12,000?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like that's
Yeah,
it was
dude,
crazy.
That is
They have a lot of power. HOAs do have a lot of power,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's kind of overreaching there, obviously.
Yeah.
I've seen it where investors go in there and they try to scare out the people that are, they want to change it over either to either just take it down and they want to get everybody in there out. So they raise their HOAs to a ridiculous $1,000 a month. I know a person that has been through that where they raised his HOA dues to $1,000 a month.
so they could demolish it.
Yeah.
Was that
'Cause
here
they
in
were trying
Denver?
to get the investor came in and bought the whole complex.
Was that here in Denver?
Yeah, here in Denver. And this is probably about 8 years ago. But they only had like 3 people hanging out in there and they wanted to get him out. So they raised the HOA dues and he fought it and fought it and fought it. And eventually the investor backed off and was able to save it and be able to get it sold to, it was back down to, I think, still $500 a month. But, he was able to get it sold because he wasn't going to be able to sell it at $1,000 a month. He couldn't do anything. He was jammed up. So, yeah, that's interesting. HOAs do have too much power, and I think something's got to change there. Something's going to have to break in that department for sure. But if interest rates, looking at what the Fed's talking about right now is 50 basis points, I think, by the end of the year, fingers crossed, double-edged sword, right? So is inflation going to go up? And, what exactly are we going to do here? No, it's a lot of unknown and chaos right now in the market, and everyone's talking about it. And no one knows where interest rates are, what's going to happen with tariffs.
Yeah, I'm somewhat optimistic on like there being some expense relief on the tax side and the insurance side. Right? I mean, we're going to get reassessed this year for taxes, or in a few next month or two. I think we should get the notification.
We
In
just
fact,
got
we should
ours.
get it now. We're in May now. Yeah,
We just got it.
So did yours go up? Did the same go down?
Well, some went up and some went down.
Okay.
It wasn't like we were seeing a couple years back, right? I mean,
everything went up.
$100,000 increases in valuations and disputing those and, not winning the challenges. But now it was it wasn't crazy. I don't think it's even worth challenging them. So it wasn't bad.
I'm curious to see for like condo complexes and other, asset classes that are just having tougher right now, like what they're going to get.
Right.
And then also, hopefully, I've heard some stories of insurance costs leveling out. But I don't know. I haven't heard that for HOAs yet, so I'm curious how that plays out.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet either. Not yet.
I've heard some friends of mine. These are some friends I know, and also a couple deals I invest in. Like some of the bigger like apartment projects. They've actually had their insurances go down the last little bit.
Well, that's promising.
Yeah. I'm about to renew my primary homeowner's insurance in like 2 weeks, so I probably just jinxed myself. Yeah. But I'm curious to see what that quote comes in.
Yeah, so we're going through that right now. So all of our insurance came back, and it was $1,500 more a year. And so my wife has been doing a lot of research on it and calling a lot of people, and she found through was it Travelers? I can't remember the name, but what they wanted was excessive for documentation of the properties that we owned. They wanted pictures of the roof, of all the structures that are on the property. They wanted to know what trees were around the house. They wanted pictures all around the house. So
is that for wildfire concern?
Well, they're probably just mitigating their risk and still charging you the same.
So I'm seeing that and hearing stories about that they're requiring a lot more documentation about the property, the pictures to document that everything's in good shape. There's nothing around it that's going to hurt it during a storm or whatever. I think that's mostly, a windstorm or something, bringing down a tree onto your house.
Yeah.
But they wanted close-up pictures, so I flew a drone around the roof and had to do a video, and they needed specific pictures of how well the roof was kept up and making sure that there's no damage to it currently. So it's worth it. So we went ahead and did it, but it is a lot more legwork for the consumer to get more affordable insurance, but it's worth it, obviously.
I mean, that's the stuff you have to do now to get it down.
Right.
So do you think after doing that, will that lower it to kind of the same as this last year? Will it still be a little lower, the same, or higher? Or is that TBD? Getting
better terms on this new carrier if we go with them. Our deductible will stay the same. So yeah, I think overall it's definitely worth it. It's better terms. So it is worth going out there and shopping because I know a lot of insurers are pulling out of a lot of places, especially where there's hail, Colorado. So there are specific areas where it's really hard to get insurance because they see more hail than we do, like in the Denver area versus Larkspur or Monument area, right? They see the big storms down there. So it's spotty. So, if the insurer looks at their maps and says, yeah, there hasn't been a lot of big storms here, we'll go ahead and insure that, no problem. But you're doing a lot more legwork where the big storms are.
Well, the other switch is from a flat rate deductible, we're seeing a percentage, right? Like 1 or 2% of your claim is your deductible.
Yeah.
So, Paul, how is your project going on?
Wow. Yeah. So I just drove by there today. They poured the base, the road base at the bottom. So they're going to pour the floor for the basement. We just passed our plumbing inspection. They had to put in all the drains, and we actually had to install a pump. I didn't think we were going to have to because of the grading. So another kind of big cost.
Like a sump pump?
Yeah, a bigger pump to pump the sewer up to the street because there was a little bit of an incline. We thought there was going to be enough of a grade for the line to run to the sewer, but that didn't work out. So we have this huge pump that they dug into the bottom of the basement, and so that'll pump the sewer line out. Unfortunately, that was another cost, but not huge.
What do those things cost?
I think it was around $5,000 for that.
Okay.
Yeah, to get everything set up and run the extra plumbing that you need to run. Not horrible, but something that we weren't expecting once again.
You've had a couple of those, huh?
Yes, we have. Well, luckily, like I said, we bought this thing good. So that's one of the things when you underwrite, and that's everywhere in this market right now. You've got to be very careful when you underwrite these things and be very conservative, and maybe increase that percentage of what you need for reserves in case stuff like this comes up. I'm talking to a lot of investors that are increasing those line items of special circumstances, whatever it may be. They're increasing that amount from maybe it used to be 10% now up to 15 or 20% in case of unknowns. But yeah, it's going along. It's going to be beautiful when it's all done. But man, it's taking its time and some hurdles to get through.
Are you gonna beat the June or July deadline for the affordable housing increase?
No, so we've already paid that.
Okay.
So yeah, the next one's coming in July, where it goes from $6.17, I think it was, up to $8 and something cents.
But you already got yours filed, approved,
yes,
and paid.
Yep, already all paid. So the permit, so we are safe from that next raise. It's kind of funny to talk to some of the investors that are building around the area the same way. And I talked to them about the affordable housing. I'm like, how much was your affordable housing? And they're like, what are you talking about?
They're all caught off guard too?
They didn't realize.
Are these other like single family home projects?
Yeah, they heard about it, but they weren't aware of how much it was. Didn't do their due diligence, kind of like me. I didn't have any idea that existed or what it was about. And once we got informed about it, I was like, wow. I mean,
because you paid like an extra 20-some thousand?
Yeah, almost $30,000.
And you added 1,600 square feet ish onto it, and that's what they based that on?
Yeah. So the ADU is free from that because it is considered affordable housing. So that was excluded, the ADU, but the additional, anything over 400 square feet, you're going to be hit with that affordable housing fee.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you know if you scrape a house, is it based on the total square foot, or is there
if it's anything over 400 square feet, and especially a new house. So
you don't get.
If you're doing an addition, it's over anything that you add on that's over 400 square feet, you're going to get hit with it. A new build, it's the total square footage.
The total square foot. Yeah. They don't subtract what the square footage was of it before.
No.
And for the ADU, you can still rent out you could go Airbnb if you wanted to. Is there any type of there's no restriction on it?
Well, it has to be your primary residence.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying when they say, okay, so no matter what you do with it, they actually are enforcing any mandates on how you can rent it out or anything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, none of
just
that.
the fact that's ADU, you get the affordable housing.
Okay. They consider it affordable housing. So, yeah.
What do you, we were talking before too, because you are kind of in the midst of ordering some supplies, but not some supplies. So you're catching some stuff before tariffs kick in, some stuff after. How are you navigating that?
That is, that's just talking to the vendors and asking them what they think. No one's really for sure, but they have a good idea. So they're telling us to order the supplies earlier rather than later. And seeing what I've been seeing, I think there is going to be a shortage and there will be price increases for sure. But yeah, cabinets, they told us we need to get them ordered before May 1st because they saw they were definitely having a price increase. And we didn't get that done because we don't have the exact measurements of what those cabinets are going to be because we need a framed wall to get those measurements. Our builder was pretty confident that we could find a better deal somewhere. They would also be hit by tariffs potentially unless they were made here somewhere in America. But yeah, overall, like the lumber package has been ordered. The appliances.
Did that come in kind of like around expected cost?
Yeah, that's basically where we had budgeted for.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit even below where we budgeted. But appliances for sure, we were expected to pay more for those. We have washer and dryer on every floor of the house. So we have 4 stories where we're going to have washer and dryers. So we're going to have a pretty big appliance package that we're going to have to order and be hit with. Most likely have tariffs on those. Pretty much everyone we talked to said, yeah, you're going to be paying more.
But when do you have to order those appliances? You're probably still a few months away, right?
Oh yeah. Before we start throwing it, we haven't even gone vertical yet with lumber or anything, just the foundation so far. So we've got a ways to go, and hopefully that there's some resolve and we have a clear picture maybe in the next couple of months of how much that stuff's going to cost so we can adjust for it and hopefully try to save in some other areas. Because we are going to have to do some cuts in some other areas. It's not going to be something we ultimately wanted, but it'll be in areas where it's not going to affect the price of the house when we go to sell. Maybe somebody may notice a little cheaper tile or whatever we put in there. But it's a higher end home, so we want to put some higher end stuff in there, but we're going to have to cut back somewhere to fit it into our budget. Now,
Jamin, before this podcast, one of the things we talked about here was you had a potential idea around doing inspections before listing a property and sharing it.
Yeah, I think it was just a thought, just because you go under contract, probably high likelihood of a concession. And like the house in Castle Rock, it was a $14,000 concession. And then you get hammered on inspection potentially, right? So, the thought is that maybe you do an inspection beforehand, and when you go under contract, you hand them the inspection and go, give me a price that reflects the inspection. And I don't know if that works or not, but I'm just trying to think of ways to put more money in my client's pocket and do the right thing and be the fiduciary that we're supposed to be.
We've done that a handful of times in certain situations over the years, even back when the market was, hot, or not quite when it was like super hot, but in the 2010s. And we would a lot of times do the inspection like you did with your client in Castle Rock, and that way go out there and fixate 3 or 4 big things. And then we would have the inspector come, walk it again, get the new inspection, and we would share it when we had like a serious inquiry, or we got under contract and say, hey, just so you know, here's what it was, here's work we did, just keep this in mind as you do your offer. People always still did their own inspection, but we had good results that way. Just like, look, we did all this work. Here's what you're getting. Just, heads up before.
Sure, and it's a double-edged sword a little bit, right? Because let's say you get a sewer scope and you have to replace the sewer. That's the sewer line. That you have to disclose that, number one, and you have to get it done. So it is a double-edged sword, and I think there's a place for it potentially, and instead of getting hammered, on concession and then hammered on inspection, and all of a sudden you're $20,000 or $30,000 less than where you were at asking price, right?
Well, yeah, you get the inspection done and you can fix those items on your terms, right? And then when it's all fixed, all you have to say is, this is a brand new sewer line. They don't have to know how much you paid for it. You don't have to negotiate back and forth. I remember there was an example where people wanted something fixed, and they were using that as leverage to get more money in their pocket, right? They were probably not going to replace that furnace that they wanted $15,000 for, but they used that as leverage when their whole intention was to put that money into their pocket to pay for something else.
Or
when you do the inspection before, you get to do it on your terms, fix it, then they don't have any leverage, right? So that helps. That can help, especially in difficult markets, especially when it's turning towards a buyer's market a little bit more. Now, I still think it's a seller's market, but buyers do have a little bit more leverage nowadays, and that may help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from like the data, this is what's so weird right now. Like the data still shows us in the seller's market because we're still, sub 3 months inventory,
Right.
Or right around there. So it's still in a seller's market, but it certainly doesn't feel like one. And this is where I'm like, well, when one of the sides has to give here, right? Or that's my assumption.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, you're seeing it for sure, and I look at the monthly reports, and you've seen that needle move, right? It's strong sellers market for a long, long time. Now that the needle's starting to move towards the buyers. Now you're right; it's still sellers market. I think you still hold the upper hand, but buyers are starting to get aware of that they have some leverage, and they're starting to use it. And a big question when I do a listing is, everybody's like, what's going to happen during inspection? What's going to come up? And maybe you just kind of eliminate that by having the inspection done. You don't have any worries. You know what to expect. There may be a couple surprises, but it ain't going to be anything big. So
yeah, I think when you talk about the metrics and being a seller's market, I think there's the metric, and then what are we actually seeing out there? And I feel like, buyers, we're getting less showings. You're lucky if you're getting one a week after the first weekend, and then they're willing to terminate on inspection.
Yep.
If they don't get exactly what they want, they'll terminate, and it could be over $500 or $600.
Yeah, I've seen
which
it
I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and commissions too. It's with this new NAR deal, and I'm seeing that too, where people are trying to discount the commissions for the buyer side a little bit.
Oh yeah, what? Can you give an example?
Yeah, so when I explain to them that the seller, it's their option whether or not they want to pay that buyer's agent, because the buyer agent is required now to have that buyer sign an agreement that if the seller is not going to pay that commission, that buyer is going to be responsible for it. And, the sellers now are, they've heard the news, they've seen it on TV that, hey, I'm able to negotiate my commission now. I want to go a little bit lower and offer a little bit lower. But when the agents call, I'm seeing a lot of kickback, that if they're not getting their full 2.8% that they feel that they deserve, that they are willing to blow that deal up if they can't get the 2.8%. And I've witnessed that more than several times.
Do the clients know they're blowing it up over their commission? This is, I guess you don't know. It's not for your sticking your nose in there, but that's where it's like, that's where it gets very interesting.
Yes.
To use a very polite word. And I think it's something like, it's good for buyers to negotiate it, but I'm sorry, shame on those agents. Right. Screw you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, you, if I do share duty for your client. Number two, I'd rather do a deal versus no deal. So I'm like, those are my two opinions on there.
Yeah, it was interesting. One agent really kicked back hard and their client wanted this place. And she told me that if the seller wasn't willing to offer them the full 2.8 that she thought she deserved, that she did a lot of work with these buyers, that it wasn't going to work out. And, I sat there and I just said, listen, this is what 2.5 is. I think there was $1,000 difference. I go, you're really going to blow this thing up over that? And she's like, well, it's either you pay or my buyers pay, and my buyer's not going to pay. So this isn't going to work. I need to earn my commission. And I said, right before the deal was about ready to blow up, I told the seller, and he's like, just give her 2.8. And so I called her and I said, okay, 2.8, let's go forward. And she's like, too late. I've already moved on to a deal where they're going to pay me my 2.8 commission.
So that's an interesting thing here is first, I'm surprised you're gonna blow up a deal over 2.5 versus 2.8. It's not like 0 or 1%. You're talking my opinion on there. But that's an interesting another piece of leverage that they can use in some form or the other on the sellers.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that maybe these buyer agents out there are experiencing lower commissions. Maybe they're getting frustrated, and now their point is, now I'm sticking to my 2.8 and I ain't moving, because I don't want my my profession, my livelihood to decrease. I'm going to hold firm to my 2.8, and hopefully everybody else does the same. I don't know, but to blow up a deal, that your clients want this place, and to blow it up, that's kind of crazy to me.
So here is a chart, since we're just talking about the buyer's market. I'll pull up on the screen here too. So this is Q1 data here from 2025, and you can see the last few years up until about a year and a half ago, or a couple of years ago, we were in like a dysfunctionally tight seller's market, right? That was the
It's a good way to describe it.
Interest rates, and now we're back around an efficient seller's market from like what time frame is this? From the last pre-low COVID interest rates, but I think it peaked in inventory last year, around 10 or 11,000 listings on it, and we're still seeing the seasonality dip and it coming back up now. But right around 15,000 active listings is where it's a balanced market. So from historical data, once it crosses 15,000, that is kind of the buyer's market side of the field. Sub 15 is kind of the seller's market side of the field. So, I mean, we still have 5,000, 6,000 homes to go. So it's going to be interesting to watch that. But I would expect this inventory to grow this year. But I'm curious how high it goes.
When was the last time we saw 15,000 homes? What was the date on there?
So you can look here on this, I don't know if I can zoom in on here on this chart. But all it did was fall right through there. It was not there very long. It was just a line passing the middle. I think that's sometime in 2011-ish time frame.
Okay.
2012 time frame looks like. Yeah, I think that looks like 2011 right there. So according to this data right here, and now it's just, you look at the history of it, like it doesn't sit around on the balance market. I mean, before it was the extreme buyer's market from 2007 to 2010-ish or whatever, and then it slipped back over to the seller side. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's been there for a while, and the market's got to cycle back to that, right? It's cyclical. So, but it's been in that seller's market for quite a long time.
Yeah. But this is where I'm so curious to see where it's like, since we still have millions, nationwide, millions of millions of homes short.
Right.
We do have a supply deficit. So how does that play into the supply and demand ultimately?
And is that going to get worse here coming up the next? I mean, I am already seeing builders pull back. Everybody's pulling back right now because of the unknown, right?
Well, one of my neighbors, just through our elementary school, our neighbors, she works for one of the big home builders, a top 5 or top 10, a name we all recognize. And she said they just laid off about 10% of the workforce.
Wow.
Just because she was like, yeah, we're sitting like 1,000 plus spec homes on our books right now. I go, what's your average? She's like, a lot lower than that.
Right.
So
yeah, just going out and talking to builders, looking at new homes with clients, they're offering incentives like crazy now. Now, I remember days when you could go in and negotiate, get a basement finished, get your landscaping finished. You can't negotiate price with new builds, but you can negotiate in incentives. And
rate buy downs.
Yeah, rate buy downs. Yeah, that's huge right now.
Yeah.
But people that bought 2-3 years ago, that bought new homes from me, are now wishing they hadn't done it because rates have not come down, where everyone was kind of predicting like, a couple of years, those rates will be down to a point where you can refinance, and they're not there. It makes sense if your rate's 1% lower than what your original rate was. It makes sense to buy down that rate, but they're not there yet.
Well, I think that's why, one of my rules of thumb is always hey, when you buy today, make sure the interest rate works for you.
Right.
Like, if you got to make numbers work at the rate today, be optimistic and hopeful that it's going to lower, but don't bank on that for your cash flow.
And that's exactly what we discussed. Like, listen, I don't have a crystal ball, but if rates do stay up, can you still afford this?
Yeah.
And they were really like, probably not, but we're going to roll the dice and see. Because we feel like the sentiment then was, rates were, inflation was starting to tick down. Everyone was starting to feel a little bit comfortable. And then all of a sudden, all this blows up. And now what's going to happen now? We don't know.
All right. One last thing here. I have the agenda, and then we can go over to other items you guys may have. Jamin, you were sharing that you talked with a client or a friend has a place she's renting out here. I think it was a condo or townhome, and she was sharing with you just the frustration and the lack of demand for her rental when she was releasing it.
Yeah, she's had it as a rental for 10 years, and recently tenant just left. and she put it on the market, and she says historically that she's gotten multiple, like a decent amount of applications with quality candidates. And this time she put it out there and she's gotten 4 applications. And I don't know all the places she's put that out there for rent, but the applications she's gotten are either super high debt with no, not great credit, or significant criminal history. Super frustrated. Now she's got to figure out what to do on that. So, I don't know if everybody's seeing that, and it's in a decent place. It's in the Ken Carroll area, so it's not like it's downtown Denver or anything like that. But yeah, she was frustrated, so she's considering selling and doing something different with that. Yeah.
And I remember from a lot of investors who are, made it through the 2008 meltdown and all that, and they said, for a lot of the landlords that held on to it, they just said that, hey, if you used to have a unit that would attract a Class B, well, now it's attracting a Class C or Class D tenant. It's just like everything just, went down a step or two. And I wonder if that's probably part economic, and then also maybe part of like that, all the new Class A inventory coming online too, just the ripple effect from that, right?
Too,
Yeah.
Because then, hey, we all know that the Class A rental apartments downtown and in Rhino, they're offering 2, 3, 4 months worth of rent sometimes, is what I've seen. Well, now that means other people can afford that. And then that's going to have a downward pressures on Class B, then Class C, and all the way through the gamut.
Ripples through everything, doesn't it? Yeah, I think obviously consumer debt is at an all-time high, so a lot of people out there are using credit cards to get by, and that's causing high debt. And so when they go to apply for a place, they look at that, and that can potentially affect your credit score, obviously. And I think that just could get more complicated as time goes on. People are going to be struggling a little bit more until you see some sort of a little bit of a correction, right? But I don't know where or when that's going to happen.
Well, guys, this was another great podcast. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for the prep work. And I know we are starting to do some happy hours and some in-person events. That's been something a lot of the firefighter community has wanted to do. So everyone out there, stay on the lookout for some dates for some very informal happy hours, some masterminds over at the Union Hall, but we are ramping up some in-person events as well.
Yep.
So
yeah, thanks for the opportunity again. Enjoy it all the time. It's great.
Great. All right. We'll talk to everyone soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.